All right, at this time, we'll call to order the City of Kenai Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for November 29th, 2023. Will you stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item A2, roll call.
Chair Twait.
Here.
Commissioner Greenberg.
Here.
Commissioner Fikes. Here. Commissioner Glendenning.
Here.
Commissioner Woodard.
Here.
Vice Chair Halstead is absent. And Commissioner Costin.
Here.
You have a quorum.
All right, thank you. Item A3, agenda and consent agenda approval. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda and consent agenda? Commissioner Greenberg.
I move to approve the agenda and consent agenda as written.
All right, do I have a second?
Second.
All right. Would the clerk please read the consent agenda items into the record?
You have approval of minutes, regular meeting of November 8th, 2023, and new business action approval requesting an excused absence for the November 8th, 2023 regular meeting from Commissioners Halstead and Commissioner Woodard. And that is your consent agenda.
All right, thank you. Are there any public comments on any of the consent agenda items just read into the record by the clerk? All right, seeing none, are there any objections or approving the agenda or the consent agenda? Seeing none, the agenda and consent agenda is approved. Item C, scheduled public comment. We have none. Item D, unscheduled public comment. Anyone wishing to speak to an item not on tonight's agenda? Have anybody out there? Nope. All right, we'll move on to item E, consideration of plats. E1 is resolution PZ 2023-21, recommending approval for preliminary plat Kenai Town Site Oilers 2024 edition for a parcel merger of Lot 4, Block 18, original town site of Kenai, and Lots 5A and Lots 5B, Kenai Town Site Oiler Edition. A right-of-way vacation of outside way as dedicated on the original town site of Kenai subdivision, a utility easement vacation, and a 60-foot right-of-way dedication in the Central Commercial Zoning District. Can I get a motion, please? Commissioner Greenberg. Oh.
I move to approve, so I lost my place, PZ 2023-21.
All right, we have a second.
I'll second.
All right, staff report.
Thank you, Chair Twait, and good evening, Commissioners. Before you is a resolution, a preliminary plat as noticed, to merge 3 lots and then vacate the right-of-way down the middle, as well as dedicating a right-of-way along the east property line. Current use right now is the Peninsula Oilers Baseball Club. You can see the structure in the northwest corner. Zoning district is Central Commercial. And as noted, right-of-way is the outside way between Cook Avenue and Riverview Drive. The approximate size or area of that right-of-way vacation is approximately 0.085 acre. That kind of totals up to, if you merge it with the vacation as well as the dedication, the one lot would become approximately 1.15. And then surrounding uses for these are, to the north, you have the Kenai Arts Center, you have the Historic Cabin Park, as well as the Old Town Kenai Park. To the south, you have a vacant lot and a few cabins to the south, and further, a single-family residence. And then to the west, you have the apartments, and the east, a vacant lot and a single-family residence. So, a little history on this. An application was submitted back in 1994 to vacate this right-of-way. I think it's important to note that back in 1994, they went through the whole process. They went through P&Z, Kenai P&Z, as well as City Council, and got it approved, and then it was forwarded to the borough, and the borough approved it. Unfortunately, that final plat was never recorded, so the applicant has now come back and applied for this to make it official. The difference with what was proposed back in 1994 is that what you see in the current plat is they're dedicating a 60-foot right-of-way. What you see here is 40. So this is the plat that was provided back in 1994. This is the plat today, zooming in a little bit so you can kind of see those hash marks down the middle. You have the right-of-way, and then to the west of that is a 10-foot utility easement, which is a common standard we have when we dedicate a road. You have a 10-foot utility easement along it. So part of it is you vacate the road, you vacate the utility easement. And then to the far east, you'll see that the applicant has proposed a 60-foot right-of-way that is consistent with our subdivision code, that for minor streets, it's a minimum 60. So they have shown that. What's interesting about this particular site is when I did research all the plats around it, just to make sure the roads and right-of-ways are shown correctly, on the surrounding plats in your packet, I didn't include this in the presentation, is it's shown a 40-foot public street easement where you see the 60 now. Back in the 60s, a bunch of public street easements were recorded in this subdivisions in this area. There were typically 5. They were ranging to 15. And it didn't show on this particular property to the east. So let me go back to the aerial. So 817 doesn't show that public street easement because it was a recorded document. We don't usually show recorded easements until they replat it. So this is the first time it's being replatted. And once it's platted, you'll see the dedicated public street easement, or in this case, the 60-foot right-of-way. So I don't know if that makes sense. I'm happy to answer questions when we get down to it. Ultimately, there is a public street easement between 817 and the 2 parcels to the east. So I just want to make it very clear. If you know the area, you probably have driven through it a couple of times. So with what they're proposing with the preliminary plat is really now we get to record this easement and make it formalized on a plat that people moving forward will see as part of the plat, versus you would only know there's a recorded easement if you go to the recorder's office. Unfortunately, I have postponed it to this meeting because this is the last meeting before the 49-day period. I still haven't got the recorded document for that 40-foot public easement because it's an older document, and unfortunately the recorder's office in Alaska still hasn't been able to find it. But being the plats to the east and the plats to the south, it shows there's a 40-foot public street easement. So I feel confident that there is a recorded document for it. I just don't have it in hand. So with that being said, with any subdivisions, we have to review that it's compliant with our subdivision design standards as well as development requirements. Staff finds that this plat does meet that. It conforms to the minimum street width because it requires 60 for minimum streets within the city of Kenai. It has utility access on all 4 sides once it's merged. It's large enough to build. On-site water and sewer systems will be subject to the requirements by the Public Works Director. Findings 2 is something I want to probably dive a little bit deeper because there is a provision in code that allows your commission to reduce that minimum width for minor streets to 50. The required minimum width typically is 60, but for street, what staff is recommending that your commission consider the 50 is because all the streets surrounding that area, if you look at the plat, they range from 30 to 35. By requiring the applicant to record a 60, it's not really consistent with the surrounding neighborhood, and we don't want to really acquire more land than we need to maintain, mostly when we're responsible for it. So staff is recommending your commission consider reducing that right away to 50 for that reason. Because 50 is substantial for the area and it's greater than what is existing under the recorded document of 40. And I kind of just highlight what I'm talking about here in red. So right now, 60 on the plat. Staff is recommending your commission consider 50, which would be the width of what the red. Then the applicant would then revise their plat to show a 50-foot dedication. Continuing on the staff's findings, minimum lot area requirements. This plat meets it. In reality, there isn't a minimum lot size requirement for this zone, the Central Commercial District. The 4th finding, the plat meet the minimum lot width. It has the utility easements around it, as well as with the lot coverage and height and setbacks, those will be reviewed if and when they do come in with a building permit. And the fifth, I think it's important to note that if your commission recommends approval of this plat, merging the parcels actually brings the existing structure into conformance or in decreasing the nonconformity. Because if you look back at the aerial, you can see the building is kind of probably crossing the property line, or it's pretty close to it. And the setbacks for this area is 20 in the front and 10 on the sides and the rear. So with that being said, the structure is probably not meeting the current setback requirements. By merging it, the southern part of the building would be in compliance with the setbacks. Hope that makes sense. So that leaves us to concluding that staff is recommending your commission approve this plat, and what you're approving would be merging the 3 parcels, vacating the portion of outside way between Cook Avenue and Riverview Drive, vacating the utility easement along the west side of the portion to be vacated, and then dedicating a 50-foot right-of-way, and forwarding this recommendation to the borough, subject to the listed conditions of approval. And then I listed all the conditions. I think it's important to go through these. First and foremost, if your commission agrees with reducing it to 50 feet, that's the first condition. The rest are just housekeeping. The fourth and the fifth is getting city council to first consent to the right-of-way vacation, but they must determine that it's no longer needed for a public purpose. And then the fifth, because of the street naming, council needs to adopt a resolution for the naming or renaming of a street within the city limit. And that concludes staff's, and I told you in the last meeting that moving forward, I will tell you what the next steps are so you can know what that next step for the applicant as well as for staff is. Staff will be forwarding your recommendation to city council, and what that means is if your commission approves this recommendation, 2 resolutions will be presented to council at their next meeting for the right-of-way vacation as well as the street naming, tentatively looking at the December 20th, since their first meeting in December is canceled. And then second, your recommendation will then be forwarded as well as the council's approval to the borough's planning department. And that concludes staff's presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you. We will or can open this up for public testimony, see if anyone would like to testify. Please come forward. State your name, please.
Jason Young, P.O. Box 59, Kasiloff. I'm a surveyor working on this project. Just here to answer any questions, clarify a few things. Oilers got a hold of me, like was mentioned. It was started 30 years ago and just fell through the cracks. The big thing was their new parking lot they realized was in the middle of the existing right-of-way, so main reason we're getting rid of that. I may or may not switch that to 50. There is an existing traveled way there people are using, not a maintained road, but people cut through there, and it's barely going to fit within the 50. If I did, it does fit in the 60. If it goes to 50, it might be close, and I really don't think anybody wants to move that over with cost and expense. So I gotta revisit my points and see what my drawing says, but may or may not change that to 50. Other than that, pretty straightforward, just combining all the lots into one for them. Answer any questions if anybody has any.
Commissioner Glendenning.
Yeah, if you if you adjusted that right-of-way width, when would that appear again before us? Like if we decide to do 50, then you come back and say, no, I wanted 60, or we say 60 and say, well, 50 will work. How does that functionally work, fit in with us? Is you is or is you ain't my baby? We gotta know.
I drew it as 60. City staff brought it up that 50 would probably work, but once I looked at the air photo sitting here now, I can't recall if the existing road fits. I guess it would come in front of city council at that time, once they approve it.
Director Mitchell, you want to add to that?
Yes. So, I mean, your commission can put a condition that as long as the applicant comes back with, more of an as-built or accuracy, that if it determines otherwise, then we'll default to 60. If you want to consider 50, subject to providing evidence that 50 would not impede on the existing road, the way it's built out. So that way we don't have to go back and forth. Or you can just default to 60. You can simplify it too if the applicant, that's what they propose. But if you propose 50 and don't kind of give it a caveat of a what-if scenario, then yes, it would have to then come back to your commission. And we can try to do that before council meeting, because we have one more meeting P&Z has another meeting before council's meeting on the 20th. So that's a consideration.
Go ahead.
Could we handle this at the next meeting? That way we'll know for sure what he wants.
I just
yeah.
assume leave it at 60.
Yeah,
Then I know
mean,
it
if-
fits. Yeah, 10 feet's 10 feet. The Oilers didn't care at all. They had no preference. And 60 meets borough code. I agree it's not necessary, but with the existing conditions, I don't think the existing travel way would fit within the 50. On the north side, it's going to cut over their corner a little bit.
Okay. Commissioner Greenberg.
So there is an existing travel way that people are using at this point for that?
Yes, I'd call it more of a driveway. Nobody maintains it. But yes, the few houses on Lot 5 and I think Lot 2C1 to the southeast cut through there and come through that way.
Is that the only way for them to get in?
No, they can come around Cook to Maine to Riverview to get in there. But as shown, we think there's a 40-foot easement there already,
Right. But we're not
which
sure.
the existing travel way does not fit in that,
Oh, okay.
for sure.
I'm just wondering if this right-of-way is even needed, because it looks like it only gives access to Lot 6B. Lot 1B has access from Cook Avenue, so I don't know if you need a through right-of-way.
With the existing, what we think is an existing street easement is why I placed it on top of there.
Okay, but do you think maybe, does it need to be there? I mean, if, let's say that didn't exist, the 40-foot.
Yeah, no, if it didn't exist,
Because
then
then Lot 6B could be accessed from Riverview Drive, and then a whole bunch of land wouldn't have to be dedicated to right-of-way.
I agree. But seeing the easement on the one plat, and again, me nor staff could find the actual
Easement.
recorded document, I'm just assuming it exists because the title report said it exists, but nobody can find the actual document.
Can we vacate it,
Yes, we could. If it's
if you could find it?
if it's really there, we could vacate it. Yes.
I mean, it just, to me, looks like we don't need this much. I mean, Lot 1B already has access from Cook Avenue. Lot 6B, all we need to do is get up enough on Riverview, and then there's a whole bunch more land that people can use, you know?
I agree. I just saw it as historically it's been used.
Okay,
And the 60-foot is simply borough code.
right, no, makes sense.
Sure.
I just wonder if we need the whole thing.
And I agree too, personally, like no road's probably our best scenario. But if people have historically used it, we may get some feedback from that.
Okay, thank you.
Director
So
Mitchell? Oh, hang on. Do you have anything to add?
On that same note, how does that impact the travel or use of the lot for the applicant?
The owners really don't use that eastern side. Besides their new parking lot in the middle, it's unused property, honestly. The Oilers have no infrastructure or any importance over there.
Director Mitchell?
So I'll dive in a little bit back to the 1994 request. I read all the minutes, read it back and forth. So back then there was a little concern from the residents to the south, And part of it why council appeared, and this is my summary, is why it was probably approved is because there was a public use easement so that they can go around. The concern back there in 94 was EMS wasn't able to cut through as quickly to the lots to the south. And then this 40-foot public street easement was on there. And I showed that to you, even on their plat from 1994, it even shows that 40-foot public street easement. You know, while we can't find that document, I feel rather confident that it does exist. Another reason why I think it's there is I talked to the Public Works Director. He maintains it. He does snow removal, and he deals with a lot of issues with the neighbors to the east because they always destroy the grass. So he made it very clear that he maintains and like the area does snow removal while it's not engineered to code, but we're currently doing snow removal on that sliver of that 40 foot. So vacation, I don't think would be appropriate because it has been there for a while and it's being maintained by the city. You know, it is up to your commission, and we can probably notify other people and let council deal with it when they can do a consideration of if the applicant wants to vacate that 40 foot. But yeah, the first part is finding the document. And even if you go to the state historic records, it literally skips that one page. It has the first page before and the page after it, but not the page you need. And so very interesting why that's the only page that's just disappeared. So I think that context is hopefully helpful, but it's not to say we couldn't propose or recommend it just being vacated altogether.
If I may, I don't think the borough would go for that because Lock 6B would technically not front legal access.
Could you,
Lock 6B still needs, it needs to touch a right of way or an easement somewhere. They can't cut through the little corner type thing.
right, like, so an access easement then from Cook or something instead of, because that, we're not limited to 60 feet, we could make it smaller, right?
Correct. If we vacated the existing easement, we could make just a driveway width 20 foot
It sounds like that's
so
what's,
they could get in there.
right, it sounds like that's what's being used, and.
Right.
And this is a big right-of-way that's,
Yeah, it seems like overkill, but
Yeah.
it's code.
Yeah.
It's code, basically, is what I go by when I draw these.
okay.
Logic doesn't always win.
Anyone else? All right, thank you. All right, I don't see anyone else to testify, so we'll close the public hearing, bring it back for discussion. I bet we have discussion. Maybe. Commissioner Greenberg.
Yeah, I do feel that that's a big right-of-way, and it's a lot of land, and really, 1B already has access. It seems like it's a lot of land to make access to 6B, where I think it could just be either come up from the south, from Riverview Drive, and then more land could be, but, or maybe an access easement just as a driveway to get to 6B, where they can, use what's existing in Cook Avenue, and then we wouldn't be as tied to that 50 or 60-foot right-of-way per code. It might be a more efficient use of the land.
Commissioner Glendenning.
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Greenberg. It's doable, and it seems a little more practical as to use of the land. 60-foot right-of-way when everything else is 40 foot around there is, it seems like a little bit of overkill, and I subscribe to Gary's theory. Thank you.
Anyone else? Commissioner Costin.
Yeah, I also agree that a property there is a waste if it's not being used instead of just a right-of-way, because a right-of-way is pretty much unusable piece of property in some aspects. So I see the use, the better use intended is to just eliminate that right-of-way, or make it smaller, but I don't know why I'd want a smaller 10-foot right-of-way. I'd just eliminate the right-of-way if possible.
Anyone else before I put Director Mitchell on the spot again? So just I had a question when you were giving your original presentation. So by deleting property lines and making this one parcel, we would eliminate the encroachment to the south, but we still would be non-conforming, then we still would have that attached to it, correct?
Correct. We would just reduce the nonconformity along the south part of the building because we eliminated that interior lot line, but it's nonconforming because of the building, how close it is to the property line in the northwest corner.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yep.
All right, good. All right, so we threw out some ideas, but anyone wishing to make any kind of a motion for an amendment to that, or do we want to take a quick at ease to get our thoughts together on that? Okay, I want to take 5 minutes. Thanks. Megan, ready? Okay, back on the record. All right, Jason, go ahead.
If we just did an easement over the existing traveled way, Lot 6B wouldn't be serviced. They won't touch legal access. I guess I always look ahead to what's the borough gonna do with it. And they're gonna wanna see Lot 6B with some kind of access. And I think if we got rid of anything with public notice, we're gonna get negative feedback from the parcels to the south that have used it for a shortcut for quite a long time, from what I know. And the only reason I went 60 is the existing travel way needs that much space to fit. It's offset to the west from that lot line. And if I only did 50, the existing travel way would encroach into the Oilers' property. The Oilers had no preference. Their biggest concern was their new parking lot being on a dedicated right-of-way. Their whole purpose of this was to vacate that existing right-of-way as is, and the owners were just fine with dedicating the full 60. And I just think if we went another route, we'd have to revisit it here and give public notice on what we're doing, and I think we would get more feedback, negative feedback from that.
Commissioner Greenberg.
Yeah, thanks for that. I think it does make sense that since they're coming out of the north and just the constraints, that maybe this is just how it needs to be. So, thank you.
All right, anything else while we got him up here? Commissioner Glendenning.
So we agree it's just as is, as presented?
Well, I think that's what we still have on the table for
I
sure.
mean, we're agreeing with his supposition.
I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Maybe. All right. So yeah, we have it as presented, without making any changes to the proposed plat at this point. So any other discussion? Director Mitchell.
So in my resolution, it does say reduce to 50. So I would need one of your commissioners, if you're wanting to go with the original, to just make a motion to amend it and keep it as the original at 60, just to be clear. They're dedicated right away. If you want to keep it at 60 or 50. If you want it at 60, I need a motion to amend that. If you want to keep it at 50, no changes needs to be made.
Very good. Mr. Young.
Is there any way we could leave it open at 50 or 60 until it's determined if that travel way fits?
Director Mitchell.
Yes, but I would still need a motion to make that caveat of we'll leave it at 50, subject to, the applicant coming back determining where the actual the right of way or the road is going through, and if 50 is adequate or not.
I just simply can't remember. I drew this months ago, and I looked at it. I'm pretty sure we're going to need the 60, but if I'll go for 50 if it fits for sure.
Okay. So are we clear on the language we would need for an amendment to allow potentially 50 feet? Commissioner Woodard.
Is it possible to do like a 50 to 60 to where they don't have to come back and they can just?
Someone else has to decide.
Oh.
Director Mitchell.
If I'm understanding you correctly, Commissioner Woodard, that we can keep it, well,
I would just, to keep them from having to come back to us if
yep,
it was given a range of 50 to 60 feet
correct.
based on circumstances at time of construction or something like that.
Mm-hmm. So you can just make a motion to, approved at 50, subject to the applicant confirming that 50 is sufficient for the access down that dedicated road. Otherwise, it'll default to 60, something along that way. That way, if the applicant doesn't prove that this road where it's at, 50 is not sufficient, it's outside of that, then they have to default to price 60, if that makes sense. So there has to be a motion amendment to put that additional condition to that first one. You're proving it at 50 because it requires your commission to make the justification why you have lessened it to 50, which surrounding uses are typically 30, 35. But now, just in case, kind of like if I can go back, like encroachment permits, you approve an encroachment at a certain distance, but your commission always come and say, subject to you verifying the as-built to make sure that what they say they needed is actually true. So it's similar condition like that.
So we could just make a motion to amend subject to the applicant's needs.
We got to put more specifics to that, though.
So an amendment to subject to the applicant's needs not to exceed 60 feet?
I might need a minute to write the language.
Yeah. We're going to take we'll take 2 minutes. We'll have this done.
Yeah, I think she had it. We just are talking around it again. She spit it out in her recitation, so.
All right, we are back on the record. Commissioner Greenberg.
Okay, so I move to amend condition number 1 to read, the proposed 60-foot right-of-way dedication may be reduced to 50 feet, subject to the applicant providing acceptable evidence that the 50-foot right-of-way covers the existing road.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All right, seeing none, can we vote on the amendment?
Sure. Commissioner Glendenning,
Yes.
Commissioner Woodard,
Yes.
Commissioner Greenberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Costin,
Yes.
Commissioner Fikes,
Yes.
Chair Tweet.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, main motion as amended before us. Any other discussion? All right, seeing none, please call the roll.
Commissioner Fikes,
Yes.
Chair Tweet,
Yes.
Commissioner Costin,
Yes.
Commissioner Glendenning,
Yes.
Commissioner Greenberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Woodard.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, thank you. Thank you out there. All right, we'll move on to public hearings. We have none tonight. G, unfinished business, none. H, new business was handled through our consent agenda, takes us to reports. I1, City Council, Council Member Dothett.
Yes, so our last meeting, not a whole lot of craziness going on. Several grants were accepted. A couple of them for the senior center, one from some COVID funds for the senior center, and another one from Hillcorp for donating for Thanksgiving dinner donation. And then there was another grant that we received for some trauma care equipment and was accepted. There was the biggest one was the veteran discount for land sales for city lands within the city. Veterans can receive a discount if they were to move to purchase lands. This kind of had a lot of good conversation. One thing I would say is that it kind of brought up a fact of the difficulty-ish of our land sales within the city, especially in the residential side. I'm hoping in the next year or so that bring before this commission some kind of an update to that, to revamp that so we can actually get some of these residential lands and possibly into these veterans' hands. So there's less confusion on how that system works. So I'm going to be working on an update to that in this next year. And then we are scheduling a Kenaitze work session probably for after the first of the year, I'm guessing, with the Kenaitze's. I haven't heard a final date on that, but with every holidays, it's going to be after the first of the year. So that's where we're at on that. And then we don't have our next meeting because of AML, and several members, being myself included, will be up at the conference that first week. So,
Any questions? Commissioner Glendenning.
Yes, yeah, thank you, Councilor Dothett. To expand on this idea, we also could maybe provide tax break for veterans on property tax.
so there were some different ideas brought up on that as far as discounts and what other communities have done. This is I think is the first step, and I'm hoping to make it more user-friendly so we can actually see it get used. So, but yes, there were some other options brought up on what we can do for discounts.
Okay. Yeah, if you approach the city attorney, some preliminary work has already been done on that. Back when our current city manager was the finance director, it was fleshed out and then got lost in the flow of proposed legislation. But the idea is out there, so there's something to at least look at and make a reading or take a sounding on it.
Was that, I'm assuming, for property taxes?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right, thank you. Move on to item I2, Borough Planning. Commissioner Fikes.
We assembled on November 13th, and we had several plats before us on the agenda. And let's see, we had 10, and they all passed by consent. And so that sped us right into our unfinished business, and there was none, so then we shot on to new business, which was a legislative matter, an ordinance approving the Anchors Away North subdivision, single-family residential, looking to do a local option zoning district. And that one was ultimately approved. And then we were looking at another public hearing, quasi-judicial matter for a right-of-way vacation. And that was in the Nikiski area, and that one was also approved. And then that shut us into a right-of-way vacation again, and this one was over off of K Beach by the college, and that was to reconfigure a corner lot down on Polk Avenue, cul-de-sac. There was being vacated and relocating the current cul-de-sac bulb and the associated utility easements, and that one sailed through and passed as well. And that was pretty much all we had in front of us. There was some director's comments referencing the final findings on the material site committee. And so Director Ruffner talked about some of the changes that were coming up, and they were actually finally ready to present them to the borough. So we should be seeing those shortly, or the assembly rather, I'm sorry, to present them to the assembly for a vote on. So that's something that's been in the works for several years, and so a lot of people had their hand in that, and it's now ready to be presented to the assembly, is my understanding.
Any questions? Commissioner Glendenning.
Yes, I have a question. Are they going to allow gravel pits in the borough?
No, nobody likes them.
Yeah. I got my road and my subdivision and my cement blocks and my gravel driveway. Now I don't want this around me. I heard
Yeah,
that.
only in the front yard, not in the backyard, but, yeah, no, they're gonna work, and that's what's taken so long, in all honesties, is the actual input from all the folks that participated on the committee, whether they were from, that industry, they were actual, gravel pit operators, or, construction equipment folks, and then actual residents. So, I mean, there was a smorgasbord of folks that were giving their 2 cents worth, and they threw some stuff out, and they presented it to the assembly, and they kicked it back and said no. And so that kind of was frustrating to us on the planning commission, because we worked closely with that committee, and we thought they were pretty solid. So to hear Mr. Ruffner say, no, they were actually going to look at some of the changes. And some of those were some safety issues. They were the noise consideration. That looks at moving forward. So, you know, folks that have stuff in the process right now, are they going to be impacted? No, he's got a deadline he's going to look at to where he's going to say, moving forward from this date, these rules will apply. Anybody behind that, they'll be grandfathered in. So that was one thing he threw out. He was talking about backup noise requirements for the equipment being utilized. They talked about hours of operation and the consideration for our area in the summertime and the need for the folks to try and get in there with less traffic. So hours of operation, the backup noise, and then dust mitigation, putting out a bond possibly for the folks that are going to go in and put these roads in and rip and tear them up kind of thing. So are we going to have a requirement possibly for them as an applicant to flesh out a bond to cover those expenses? Those are some of the things. So I like I say, we didn't vote on it or anything. Like you say, it's headed towards the assembly right now. So I'm pretty sure we'll get it back from there. But those are some of the key points that they were trying to hash out.
Councilmember Dothett.
I just wanted to add that Ruffridge will be having his legislative update coming up on the 6th at the chamber for their luncheon. So he'll be here.
Ruffner?
Ruffridge. Justin.
Ruffridge.
Yeah.
The state dude.
Yeah, the state dude.
Okay.
All right, moving on. I3 Administration, Director Mitchell.
Thank you, Chair Twait. I don't have too many things. The second admin assistant position job posting was posted today. It's going to be posted for 2 weeks, closing on December 13th. So if you know anyone who's interested in a part-time job with paid time off, holiday leave, please forward that and let them know that they can apply for it. And then the the borough is having a training on their new GIS map. I thought that would be important to share on December 4th at noon and 6 p.m. and it's all via Zoom. So if you want to get familiarized with the new GIS from the borough, they're providing training on that. And I wanted to ask in advance, since I have a few projects coming, if who would be here on the December 27th meeting. I know it's a holiday kind of before, and I need to make sure I have a quorum because potentially I'll have at least 3 projects, if not 5. So, yes.
The question, is that projects for us or deliverables for you that you have to do?
These are only projects for me to get to you, but they're all for you. I have potentially 3 plats, depending if they resubmit on time. 1 for sure, a variance that got submitted today for signage, off-premise signage, and an HOP that I've been waiting for over 3 weeks because it's a code enforcement. So potentially 3 plats, 1 HOP, and 1 variance.
I can make it. I'll be around this year.
So I guess the question is anyone not going to be available on 12/27?
Regrettably, I'll be here.
That would be me, 13th and the 27th. I'm pretty sure I won't be.
Okay.
I will try, but Santa's sleigh is overflowing.
Okay. It sounds like I'll have a quorum. Okay. That's
Mr.
all I have.
Costin, you're here?
I'll be out of the area, but I can attend via Zoom,
Okay.
if that's possible.
I'm going to ask the dumb question that everybody else wants to ask, but I'm going to ask it. What's an HOP?
A home occupation permit?
Okay, thank you. I just did that for Jim. I knew he didn't know. All right. Well, I have one question for you as far as the waterfront redeveloping. How's that? Is that getting closer for a unveiling?
Yeah, we changed plans a little bit. So I met this week with the city manager, the assistant city manager, city attorney, and Max Bess, our consultant, on Monday. And we kind of finalized some things that needs to be changed to staff's rewrite. And it's now I understood it incorrectly that I thought it would be coming before your commission first, but because it's an ordinance, a change to code, it's going to be introduced to council and then bring back to your commission. So there's talk about bringing it before Harbor as well, Harbor Commission, and depending on the council, what their recommendation of whether they want your commission and Harbor to do a joint work session. So this is more likely going to occur at the beginning of the year due to some of the changes that we discussed. And I think now I have a very clear direction of how to finalize this draft. So we're looking at January, introducing the ordinance to council, and then go from there.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? Commissioner Glendenning.
Yeah, just a question. Of course, always on the radio in the morning, I listen to the KSRM, and it seems that the city of Soldotna secured significant funding to assist them with management of their waterfront on the river proposal. Is some of that funding still around for us, or has that ship sailed?
Director Mitchell.
I would assume that ship has sailed, but because the fact that they got a consultant in place, their grant was probably applied for the year before, if not after, but I can keep looking. I'm not aware of ones to the same grant that they applied for that has been opened up again. Yes, they got a substantial grant to do a master plan. Preferably, that is what I would have liked to see for our rezone. But we're just doing the rezone, and then maybe in the future we'll do a master plan, subject to getting a grant, I hope.
Yeah, somewhere in our wishes and dreams or legislation or comprehensive plan, there is a demand or desire for a waterfront comprehensive plan coming from the harbor. And this would be the ideal time to initiate that so we can have something that's holistic rather than, some council member gets a hot flash and comes storming into your office and say, this is what we want to do. But to bring it for us, we're the Planning Commission. Title 29 allows us to do these things. I think we're reasonable citizens and can maturely identify the needs for our waterfront and for our community, and not let the council dictate to us or work us out of a silo. My thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, we're going to move on. Additional public comments. Looks like we have nobody. We did talk about the meeting on December 13th. I think we're good there. Commissioners' comments and questions. Commissioner Glendenning, you're getting down to your last few commissioners' comments and questions.
I know. I'll save some up for the last thing. But
Finale.
Anyway, this was an interesting meeting tonight, and we had a good discussion. And it's mostly about documentation and how do we verify our assumptions. And I think we worked through that issue very well, thanks to the leadership of our planning director. And so I think we have a good future in front of us. So I think there'll be a couple new members here coming next year, and I think that'll work out very well. I think one has experience here, and another has experience with Soldotna, I believe, is how it finally rolled out. And so if the individual from Soldotna has had any positive influence from Zarneski, you're going to have an all-star participant there. My thoughts, my wishes and dreams. So anyway, good luck, and we'll see you next meeting. And again, thank everybody for their hard work over time, and our planning director works very hard, working with all the knuckleballs and curveballs we throw her, and we managed to come up with good solutions from the options she has given us, and I'm appreciative for that. And thank you.
Very good. Commissioner Woodard,
I'm good.
getting ready to start bringing some
I am.
baked.
I'm going to be baking. Yes, you get stuff next time.
I was just asking for Jim again. Commissioner Costin.
Yep, like was said earlier, I really did gain a lot from this discussion we had tonight. It really helped me out, my way of thinking on this Planning and Zoning Commission. So,
Very good. Commissioner Greenberg.
I don't have anything, thank you.
All right. Commissioner Fikes.
Just an excuse for the 13th and the 27th, please.
Doing the people's work. We'll let you do that.
I will try.
All right. And I have nothing further to add. So with that, we will adjourn the meeting.